Welcome to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, here to share some amazing conversations. We're talking business, health, making and saving money, or starting something epic. Think of this as your go-to spot for stories that do a lot more than just kill time. They spark ideas, give you a boost, and perhaps even change the way you look at the world. I'm pulling in the experts, the thinkers, the doers, and the dreamers. We're about to dive into stories that open doors and ideas that light up your brain. Here we go. Welcome, everyone, to the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. I'm your host, Desiree Stanley, and with me today is my guest, Jessie Torres. How are you today, Jessie?
Doing great. Excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I am so excited to have you on and have this conversation with you. Jessie, you are so, multifaceted, and you have had so much experience. And just to share a little bit, you are a peak performance coach and life strategist. You have certifications that cover a huge variety of topics, including everything from Anthony Robbins coach, certified meditation instructor, domestic violence certified coach, your shaman apprentice, and Reiki practitioner certified. So I am so honored to have you on the show and learn from you today. So again, welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I always give tons of value for someone that allows me to speak to your audience. So thank you. I don't take it lightly.
Yes. Well, again, thank you. And Jessie, tell us, if you would, how this path came to be for you, because it does cover such a wide variety of areas. What was it that led you down this road and to where you are now?
That's a big question. That- I would say the quick answer is that it's a compilation of my life journey, right? It was one of those things that you kind of get uppercuts in life and you get to a point where you start to ask those questions like if this is life, then it's too hard. I can't bear it anymore. And I think that it was getting to that based on childhood abuse, 18 years in a marriage abuse, my brother's being murdered, like so many different things that to get to a place of complete apathy at 38, which is now some 20 years ago, you start to wonder why you're here. And it was an act of kindness, actually, that woke me up. And that's why I love sharing with people when there's chaos in the world and we feel helpless. We are not helpless because our act of kindness can change the trajectory of someone's life like it did mine. And the people that were kind to me will never know who they woke up in that moment. I didn't even understand it. I didn't know to call it kindness. I just knew that it short-circuited me. And I thought, I don't know what this feeling is, but if this feeling's available, then life is worth living. And it gave me the courage to get out of my very difficult marriage at the time. And that catalyzed a whole nother level of survival. Me with my 3 kids, I was making $8 an hour back then. And now trying to find a place for us to live when we had a 4-bedroom house that was custom made. Now I'm like in survival. And I think sometimes the depth of our darkness can be converse to the height of our light. We just don't know to seek it. Right. And so when going through that, I didn't have another choice. And I knew that I had 3, they were teenagers, they were 17, and I have twin boys, and my daughter was 15. And so you just do it. You take action. And what I ended up building was a lot of grit, a lot of tools that I didn't even know. I just went on a quest. Once I realized that I was going to choose this life, then I wanted to understand. I wanted to understand humanity. I wanted to understand why my dad did what he did, why my mom ignored me, why my husband did what he did, and why I allowed it. And I got my hands on every book I could find and every workshop, seminar, whatever it was. I wanted to understand how at 38 years old, I didn't even know my favorite color. I didn't even know who I was. I was just completely a physical body walking. And I went on an obsession, if you will. And from that has led me to all these certifications. But at the end of the day, what got me here has been all of that journey, right? And I really firmly believe that we have to trust the divine order of things. I was raised Catholic, turned Christian. Now I'm just spiritual, and I respect all people's perspectives. I believe there's something greater than me telling my heart to beat. And I lean in on that, and I trust the divinity of our life journey. And I am grateful for every aspect of my path, from the darkness into where I am now, because it made me who I am. And I'm grateful that I was able to say that to my father before he passed. So that's kind of what got me here in a Reader's Digest version.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Jessie, thank you so much for sharing that. And What a journey indeed. And so I am so sorry that those experiences had to happen. But as you shared, it is also what made you who you are today, right? And so when we look at these things that are dark and sad and disturbing and all of the levels of that darkness, it can be contrasted by what we can become, what it's crafting us to be. It's like the idea of forged in fire, right? Where that metal, you're putting it in the fire and you're being tested and changed into something stronger and better. And so I want to not make light of the experiences that you went through, but truly it's those things that make us who we are going to become. So
Exactly.
thank you
Exactly.
again.
I
Yeah.
always tell clients, you have to look for the gift in your adversity or your pain, because if you don't, you will only remember the pain. But there is another story. And I think that I was taught to eat my own medicine 2 years ago, actually on Thursday. This Thursday, my little brother was also murdered. So back in 30 years ago, when my older brother was murdered, and these are two totally separate incidents, totally separate lives, I lost all faith in anything. I was like, I don't know if God exists, probably all nonsense. And if you do exist, I hate you for taking my brother. And I was just like angry. And it wasn't until my brother actually, I saw him and he just said, everything's as it's supposed to be. And I didn't know what it meant at the time, but it gave me peace. And from that has been my quest and my journey to my own connection. And when my little brother was taken 2 years ago, it was like, in my essence, I was like, okay, no, I already checked that box. I already lost a brother. This is not happening, and I felt rage for the first time ever. I usually go to sadness. I felt rage. And again, I'm always asking powerful questions and like, okay, so if both my brothers are meant to be taken, then what do you want with me? And I got the memo that I need to eat my own medicine. So what does that mean? I need to find the light in the darkest moment. So even in my deepest, darkest moments of sorrow, I was able to see the beauty. The magnificence of life is polarity. It is the two opposite ends. We don't know light without dark, right? We don't know positive without negative. And so in the moments of my deep sorrow, I was able to see his daughters, who the three oldest, different moms they'd never met before, who came together and were acting like they were raised together. My family that showed up in a way that was beautiful. My people that posted on my brother's Instagram about the difference he made. And so it was such a beautiful moment to be able to be almost in that witness chair of witnessing Jessie in sorrow while being in this like spiritual place of like, oh my gosh, just seeing the magnificence and the beauty in the darkness. So it's one of the biggest things that I help people with when it comes to their traumas or things that have happened to them, when they don't believe that they can find light in their pain.
Yeah, and that's for sure. I think it's incredibly easy to allow that sadness, the grief, the darkness to consume us, and to be able to find the goodness in the situation. And like you just shared, the family that came together, the difference that was made in the lives of so many people because of your brother and the experiences. And then you being able to see that is tremendous. So thank you again for sharing that. So, can we talk about something that you share, and that's fierce grace? And tell us what that means and how you use that in the work that you do.
Absolutely. So fierce grace, if you look at it, it's kind of two opposites. It's the fierceness, and so if you could look at it as masculine and feminine, right? It's the fierceness that's in it, it's that mama bear energy, right? That says, you know what, don't hurt my child, right? And it's the grace, it's the love, it's the connection, it's the femininity, it's the open heartedness, and we all carry both energies, masculine, feminine, men and women. And so I think fierce grace is a way to find our hearts, like not living in our masculine and fighting our way through because we're angry, because we're hurt, because we're wounded, but more so mama bear energy versus I'm going to fight to kill energy, right? And the grace is being willing to open our hearts again. After we've been hurt, I call it heart armor. We build heart armor around our hearts, and we want to protect because we were innocent children and we were playful, and boom, somebody took our lunchbox, and we start to build this armor to protect us, and then we show up as a version of ourselves. Then we feel we have imposter syndrome, or no, I can't really let all everybody see what's happening, and then shame creeps in, and it's just this snowball effect. So fierce grace is being able to be in balance with both energies. And harnessing the power of our strength and our will to be strong and step forward, and the grace of love and connection and unity. I believe that we are here for each other. If not, what are we here for? What are we here for? Right? Even in business or in this podcast, we're connecting with people. This is a human game. So if we're going to do that, we might want to pay attention to love, right? Being able to be loving, being able to show up. What would ask the question, what would love do in this moment when you don't feel loving? Right? And start to bring that to the table. So fierce grace, it's a healing. It's going deep into parts of us that were hurt. It isn't therapy, but it's definitely information gathering, because what I have found in 20 years of doing this is that when there's limitation today, it has some form of connection to something that the child made meaning of in the moment of the experience, which is my definition of trauma. Right? Trauma, people think it's a rape or something like that, which of course it is. However, I believe trauma is whatever the child made meaning of in the moment of the experience or when safety was lost. And so we don't know it. It's an unconscious thing, right? When a little boy goes to the grocery store with its mom and is playing in the aisle, and mom goes to the end of the aisle to grab something, she can see him, but he can't see her, right? He lifts up his head and screams, "Mom," and she's like, "I'm right here," seconds. But for him, in his unconscious conditioning, he anchors, I could be left behind. I could be abandoned, right? And so no abuse. We didn't know. It's just what we do as human beings. We make meaning out of everything. So now he doesn't want mom to leave his sight. He's clingy, right? Now he's 35, wondering why he can't keep a relationship because he's insecure, possessive, and controlling, right? And he doesn't know it's tied to that moment. So fierce grace is a way that we go into these moments and we extract where the meaning was made. We bring it to conscious awareness so that now we can take back our sovereignty, because we don't know it's running in the operating system, right? That's why with a lot of coaches now, which I love, and I think that we're mindsetting our way out of healing, because we get the tools, make your move and move through it, and positive affirmations, and all of that is fantastic, but we're bypassing the part that started the limitation to begin with. And so how can we go to the part, give it what it needs, and then never ever go back to it, right? So that we are empowered and we live life with fierce grace. So now, because challenges aren't going to stop, it's part of life, right? But now the question is, how will you choose to navigate it? Because when you're at the helm of the operating system of the mind, you now get to make a conscious decision, because you're not running an old program that is causing you to show up in a way that isn't your congruent, authentic self. So that's what we do with fierce grace. We extract that, we pull those weeds, we upgrade the program and install the new software.
Thank you. That's fantastic, Jessie. So good. I love the example that you shared because, yes, we have those like big T traumas, right? And little T traumas. And that example of thinking that you have been left behind or you're lost or something like that can be very traumatizing, but you're not realizing it. And so, again, great example for us to think about that as a trauma, because we do often think it's only just those big T trauma
Right.
items, but really those small T trauma items do have an effect on us and how we are acting and behaving without us even realizing it. I totally agree. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, the point about how important it is to really be looking at those things, like trying to find and look at those things as opposed to just muscle through, keep going, trudging forward, and not really dealing with those issues that exist. And the way that you described it as upgrading the operating system, I love that. It's like finding those bugs in the system,
Yes.
cleaning those out, and then upgrading and moving on. So great analogies. I love that. So, and you talked a bit about trauma, again, the little T, big T kind of thing. What is another common myth that you think that people often have about trauma?
Well, it's that where I've had clients that say, I had a great upbringing. My mom and dad were great. I don't have any trauma, right? But it could be the teacher that says something, right? Like my daughter was hypersensitive. Like she worried about the soldiers and the policemen, and she was afraid that mom and dad were going to die. And I had to lay with her until she fell asleep and knew that I was still alive. I mean, she's just hypersensitive. But he wrote a thing about, because she would diary and she would write notes. And he just like, if she continues to think this way, she's going to have a hard life. Like, why would you say that to a child? You know what I mean? Like, And boom, it's planted in there. So I'm going to have a hard life. You know what I mean? And so we don't know to know. And so I call it the three pillars of trauma. There's undiagnosed, there's unacknowledged, and there's unresolved. Right? So the undiagnosed ones are the ones that are in there that you don't realize. Every human being, the myth is that you think you don't have it, right? Every human being has some meaning that was made. It could have been, I had a lady that I worked with, and she was physically beautiful, fit, like beyond. She was hitting her goal to get to 5 million. She got to it, and her husband was about ready to leave her, and she was exhausted, and because she wouldn't be off her phone. She'd go to the soccer game, but she wasn't really there. And she had two young boys, and she was in mass depression. And on paper, on Facebook, you see her and she's rocking. You know, she's on stage, she's hit her financial mark, and she's in misery. And as we worked together, we broke down, it all happened, and she didn't remember until we worked together, and she got to where she was 10 years old. And this was a friend of the family's who isn't even around anymore, said to her, "You'll never be as thin or as good as your sister." So it was just whatever. People say stupid things, right? But for her, it stuck in her so much that she was comparing herself, and her sister was in the same business. So she would compare herself to her sister, always had to be ahead of her. And not only now was she comparing herself to her sister, she was comparing herself to every other woman. She was comparing herself to herself's version of last year. And she was in this constant cat chasing its tail. You know, I have to do this, I have to do this, or I'm not enough. That man says, and now she didn't remember. She didn't realize in conscious awareness why she was so desperate to go to the next level, go to the next level. And I get that with a lot of high achievers. They achieve a lot, but it's never enough. It's never enough. They put it in the drawer, they go to the next thing. And they don't realize that they're chasing worthiness on their achievements, right? So we don't know to know. So that's the undiagnosed. Now, the unacknowledged trauma, I use myself as an example, me and my ex-husband. I was 18 and he was 21. Okay. I was still trying to fight my dad off. Okay. He walks into my life. He's the first one that called out what was happening between my father and I. It was the big dark secret. And he's the one that brought me home late one night, and he looks at my dad who's standing out on the porch, and my dad's angry, and he tells him, "You get out." And I went in the house, and next morning he says, "What's up with your dad?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He was mad because you brought me home late. And he said, "No, that was not an angry father. That was a jealous man." And it opened Pandora's box. I probably shared with him more than I needed to. And the fact that he still wanted to be with me, it was another short circuit moment. I'm like, wait a minute. Now you know all my dirty, because I didn't know I had adopted shame. I had adopted, I'm filthy, gross. No one would ever love me. Now I have this stain on me. And the fact that he wanted to be with me, I fell madly in love. Now, he came from a very alcoholic mother who was brutal. He would come home to his sisters unconscious on the floor. He was the youngest of four, right? So we knew our big traumas. He said, "My kids will never see me drunk." I said, "My kids will never be molested." And we thought we fixed it, right? So that's the knowing the big trauma, but we didn't acknowledge all the mini traumas that came with that, all the meaning that was made. My dad was explosive. He would argue and he would call us stupid, but he wouldn't get vulgar. My ex did, right? So he was like 10 times worse than my dad, but in my unconscious, it was familiar. This is just what men do. This is who men are. That's what I adopted, right? So those are the unacknowledged traumas that go with a big trauma that oftentimes we don't know to acknowledge. We just thought, as long as, hey, we don't drink, and as long as, nobody's getting molested, we're good, right? So that's the unacknowledged. And then unresolved is pretty self-explanatory. It is not resolved, so it keeps coming up. I tell people, if you don't face the thing, it's like a nagging child. "Mommy, mommy, 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 pay attention to me." And it's going to come up, and it'll come up if you were abused by your father. It might come up in a boss. It might come up in a boyfriend, or sometimes it comes up in a woman. It's the energy that seems familiar, and you keep attracting it into your life until you resolve it. So that's why it's so important for us to just acknowledge, hey, we're meaning-making machines, and our life experiences, there are people that come into our path that a microchip goes in the brain. We don't realize it's unconscious. And the outcome is to bring it to consciousness, to bring it to awareness so we can navigate it and be at the control panel of what we choose to do with it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessie, for detailing all of that for us. The three different ways that trauma is affecting us that we either are recognizing or aren't recognizing, and what it can mean going forward in our lives if we're not acknowledging or processing those things. So tremendous. Thank you so much for sharing that. And what do you think that people may be misunderstanding as they're going through these difficult circumstances? And sharing what you just did about the unacknowledged, what else do you think is like something that people just are going through these circumstances that are difficult and challenging and they're not understanding what it means?
Well, one of the powerful ways to get to that, because that's the human being wants answers. It's like, why is this happening? I think the quality of our lives is in direct proportion to the quality of questions we ask ourselves. Right. So for a long time, one of the questions that I would constantly go to when challenges met me was, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me, God? Why does this keep happening? Why can't I figure it out? So we say, ask a disempowering question, you're going to get a disempowering answer. So we all have different parts of us. You're different as a woman than you are a daughter, right? And so there's a different parts, and there's a part that is ready to say, well, what's wrong with you, Jessie? Let me tell you all the things that are wrong with you. This is why you can't blah, 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 right? And so I don't want to engage that part of me because it's very disempowering. So I have a friend who his primary question was, are you effing kidding me? That was the constant. So again, it draws in that drama. Or another client who her primary question was, why does this always happen to me? So it just invites that disempowered state. So now when you're faced with challenges, and some coaches say, life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you. And I say it's happening from you. And I know that's hard to swallow sometimes because how could you say that I'm drawing this in? But we are energetic beings. I'm also a certified coach for the Institute of Heart Math. And it's an organization that has studied the rhythm of the heart for the last 30 to 40 years. And it's, for me, I love it because it allows me to bring in the spiritual with the physical, because our heart is beating. That's why the doctor listens with a stethoscope. So it's emitting a frequency. If you wear a heart rate variability monitor, it's going to, when you're in frustration, when you're in sadness, when you're in, oh my God, this is again, that energy, your heart is actually beating chaotic. Okay. So your cortisol levels are up, right? Your autonomic nervous system is out of balance. It's in sympathetic nervous system. And conversely, when you're in gratitude, appreciation, compassion, love, your rhythm is now bum bum, bum bum, which is the normal state of being. Now, in that state, that coherence, that energy now communicates with the mind effectively. That's where you get aha moments or ideas you didn't know. Like, oh my God, I thought of this, let's do it. But when we're in contraction, we actually deplete our energies. And so when we are, let's say, I'll use my beautiful mother as an example. She's had a lot of trauma. She's lost two sons, right? She's also lost her home. She lost her emotional support dog. I mean, and so her lenses are now jaded. Everyone's trying to take advantage of her. Everybody's trying to take something away from her. And this is how she lives. And so she doesn't trust people. And she's a beautiful woman, a very loving woman, but these are her lenses. So guess what? She attracts trouble. She attracts her car breaking down. She attracts the tow truck driver that told her it's a battery and made her spend $200. That wasn't the case, And she's like, but look at what happens. Look at what happens. I'm like, Mom, because you vibrate. Your heart rhythm is literally emitting this beacon of like, everybody's out to get me. Everybody's like, and so that's what vibrationally you attract. It's an energetic thing, and we don't realize it. That's why I always say, check yourself before you wreck yourself. And pay attention. What is the spinning dialogue? What is the self-talk? What is going on in your frequency? Are you connecting with your inner self? Are you meditating? Are you praying? Are you bringing in more aspects of love and forgiveness and all those frequencies that allow us to emit a frequency? I'm like, I have worked so hard to be at peace. And so when I see her like that, for me, I always say my mom is my greatest teacher. Because it's such a contrast to what I've learned in my journey to live with, that when she behaves in that way, it's very pungent for me. I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I do not live that in that space. So for your listeners, I'd love to share that it doesn't mean that what's happening to you is okay, but it just is. And like I say, when my brother passed away, like I said, I checked the box. No, this can't be happening. But if we walk around saying it shouldn't have happened, we are in an argument with the reality that it did. And when we're in an argument with the reality, we're signing up for suffering. And when we sign up for suffering, we're going to vibrate at that level. We're going to attract more of it, right? It's kind of like when you hang up the phone and you're frustrated or you just got in an argument or whatever, and then you go grab your coffee, you spill it on the floor. And when you want to go grab the ketchup and it's right in front of you, but you can't see it, right? And again, it just snowballs. And so like I told you before, I see every part of my path as a part of my divine choreography. So I'm going to choose to handle things with grace. I'm still human, so I'm going to feel. If something happens and you feel angry, but put a clock on it. Like when you intentionally say, I'm going to be angry for 5 minutes. I'm going to yell obscenities. I'm going to kick and scream. I'm going to do all the things. And you intentionally do it. And say, for a whole hour, I'm going to be angry. When you do it that way, you find that you don't want to stay there. You don't want to stay there for an hour. You don't want to stay there for 30 minutes. But do give yourself permission to feel, right? But don't let it be in hiding, meaning, no, I don't care, I don't care, I don't care, when you can tell that it's still in your essence and you're still holding on to it. So as human beings, we have to feel our feelings, but don't stay stuck in the disempowerment, because if you trust the divine order of it all, it is here for your highest and greatest good. It is, even the suck.
Oh gosh, Jessie, that is just wonderful. Thank you so much. There's so many points in there that I absolutely love. The point about it's happening from us is just a new and interesting way. I've never thought of it before, because I've always considered it's happening for our benefit, right? These things that are happening, whether we don't want them or we do want them, they're happening for our benefit and shaping who we become. But that's such an interesting way to think about it. And the energy, I agree. Our heart is electromagnetic, right? I mean, it's emitting energy. So it's going to be putting out something and you're going to get that back. So I agree with you as well on that. But what maybe are some questions that we could be asking ourselves instead of, why is this happening to me? And how come all of these negative things are always occurring in my life? That kind of stuff. What are questions that we could be asking instead?
Oh yeah, there's some really powerful ones. A simple one would be, what's good about this? Now, sometimes it feels like nothing, right? So then ask yourself, what could be great about this, right? What could be great about this flat tire? Well, maybe I'm avoiding an accident that I might have had. Maybe I was driving a bit too fast and I needed to slow down. Or I don't know. No matter what, we're always scripting a story, right? You say, this always happens. It's screwed up. The universe hates me. We could write that story, but that's kind of hurtful and contracting and not fun. Or we can write the story that maybe this happened because I was avoiding an accident down the road. I don't know. But either way, we're creating the story. So why not create one that feels good, right? So another question, other than what could be great about this, is what's the opportunity here? What muscle am I being called to build in this moment? Is it courage? Is it resilience? Is it perseverance? Is it my fighter energy? What am I being called to? Versus, why is this happening to me, right? Where's the win? What's the win in this, right? These kinds of questions invite that other part of you. I always separate the parts, like I said, the superhero and the supervillain, right? So there's a superhero within all of us. There is a part of us that shows up, kicks butt, and handles the situation in moments of need. It just shows up and does it. We all have that inner superhero, but oftentimes we push it back in the back seat and we only call upon it when we need it in moments, right? And that other part, the supervillain, tends to drive the bus. I'm going to drive this bus and just, just like, oh my God, I didn't get the thing done. God, you didn't call her back. Gosh, why don't you keep your word? And it's just this constant dialogue. And it's just like, oh no, the superhero can handle it. So start to ask superhero questions, because when you start to ask those questions, that's the part you call into, right? When I'm saying, what could be great about this? Well, what could be great about this is that, you know what? I'm going to find a way. I'm going to build a resourceful muscle. That's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to figure this out because that's what I do. Okay, great. So now my superhero is activated and now I will actually get answers. It's the craziest thing. It really works. If I ask, this is screwed up, why does this happen? Then that part shows up to say, well, because you screw things up, because you looking back then, remember the thing you did? Oof. And it just stacks, right? And now our lenses get jaded. So again, what could be great about this? What's the gift? What's the gift in this moment? Where's the win? What's the opportunity? What muscle am I being called to build in this moment? What part of me needs to show up? Lots of great questions.
Oh, yeah. Those are fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing them.
Mhm.
I think that's something that each of us can begin right now in the moments that happen to us. We can ask ourselves those questions. And what you said in there also reminded me that our mind is going to find evidence to support whatever belief we have, right? And so if you say, I always screw things up, look at here's all the ways I've screwed things up, your mind is going to give you a list of all those things. So if you ask yourself a different question, you're going to get different answers. I love it. I want to ask you about something that you say is unshakable living.
Mm.
And so, what does that mean? And how, because I think that has to do with forgiveness. And so, how does that play into the work that you're doing? How can that help us in our lives? What do you want to share on that?
Sure. Unshakable living is the ability to face off with challenges, because again, and even be grateful for them. I know it sounds weird and counterintuitive, but if we had a contract with our creator and we said, you know what, I want to be someone that has massive resilience and just never quits. It's like, okay, so if you're going to be that, then we're going to have to give you lots of challenges that you overcome. Okay. So it's just like, okay, I'll sign up for that. Right. And so then the challenges come and life is filled with them. Right. We have our desired expectations of how we want things to be. And then we have challenges. So I think living an unshakable life is being able to have the challenges come, but it doesn't take us out. It doesn't have us go to our old emotional home of anger or sadness where we want to shut down and we want to believe that the world is terrible, right? We're able to regulate our emotions. That's a big part of it. Is I think that right now, I mean, when COVID hit, it was like we were emoting like a loose fire hose. Everybody is attacking everybody. You know what I mean? And it's because we have unresolved trauma. And it wasn't COVID, it was the topic. And now you don't think like me, all my unresolved trauma, I'm going to barf at you. Right. And so there's three pillars of emotional wellness that are so important. I say emotional awareness, emotional intelligence, and emotional fitness. Emotional awareness is being aware. Oh, I'm triggered right now. Something's coming up. What just happened? When she said that, it triggered me and I'm about to, but I know enough not to. So I'm going to remove myself from the situation. Right. So navigating, being aware of your emotions so that you can make a conscious decision of what you want to do. And then emotional intelligence is not only being aware of your emotions and being able to navigate them, but also the emotions of others, right? If you're in a room of people, you want to feel the room, like what's going on in the room and how can you navigate? And then emotional fitness is constantly practicing that muscle, making sure that you're constantly checking in. So living unshakable is being able to come back to regulation, come back to our own equilibrium so that we can be in best service of others, so that we can have compassion when somebody shows up and is cruel or unkind. We start to see it as a reflection of their pain or wound, not your truth. And so now I can wrap them in compassion. Doesn't mean I want to be on the other bullseye of them, but I'm not taking it to heart. If somebody calls me a name or whatever, I'm not going, how could you? Because there's no part of me that believes that's true. I just know that something in them is in suffering, because when people spew venom, think about it. If they're going to do that, they have to eat that first, right? That venom lives within them when they're going to be that way. So it's just like, ooh, yeah, that's some dark stuff. Like, I'm so sorry you're navigating with that, but I'm gonna keep going. And so unshakable is like, I use my little brother as an example, is to be able to navigate that and look at it and like really, and because again, I'm human, that was no, right? But again, I know that if I stayed there, I'm in an argument. So I'm going to find the gift, I'm going to find the good, and I'm going to continue to live my life in that space of openness, knowing that when challenges come, they're part of my contract, my script, and I'm going to face off with it in a way that allows me to grow and expand and be the best version of me. That's how you become unshakable. Again, it doesn't mean that challenges come in a fun package, but I either allow myself to succumb to sadness or to deplete me and to bury me, or I choose to allow it to help me evolve in my own spirit.
Oh my gosh, Jessie, again, just more fantastic, just nuggets of goodness in there. Really, I think all of us can use those ideas of the awareness. And something that came up for me was this idea of allowing people to be wrong about you.
Mm.
And because you know who you are in
Right.
your heart, right? And if somebody's going to say something about you that you know is absolutely not true, instead of arguing with them to say, that's not me, that's not who I am,
Right.
that's not what I'm about, it's like, "Could just be wrong. And I know who I am."
Yeah.
So that was really interesting the way that you shared that. So thank you so much.
And
Good,
that's a
good
big
stuff.
one when you think about navigating life. We're so afraid of judgment, right? We're so afraid we don't take chances. We don't dive in because we're afraid we're going to be looked at a certain way. And I always ask the question in the group of like if I'm speaking or whatever, and I'll be like, in a world of I think we're over 8 billion now, is it possible that we will be judged? And of course, the answer is a resounding yes. So now that we know we're going to be judged, can we just get on with our bad lives? You know what I mean? Like, just go live unapologetically. Be you, be the best version of you that you could possibly be. And also be in a place of giving. Like one of the questions I love do with your kids in the morning is like when they're getting ready for school, ask them whose life will be better because of you today. And have them go out with those lenses. And then when they come home for dinner, ask them, whose life was better because of you? And start teaching us to have that benevolence, to have that desire to serve and be unapologetic with who you are. I think that's all God in the universe asks of us is to be you, completely unapologetic. It's why we like people like Prince or Elton John. We're just like, why? Because who the heck would walk out with a G string on stage, and pull it off? Where everybody's just, why? Because he was unapologetically who he was. And that pulls a part of us forward because there's a part of us that's, oh no, because I'm kind of crazy. And what if they don't love me? Right? Or what if they think badly of me? And so we live our lives with all these different versions of us that then when somebody falls in love, they fall in love with that version, then we're afraid and insecure because, well, if they knew the real me, they'd leave me. Right. And that's why divorces happen and all of that. So again, it's like judgment is a thing. We do it as humans. It's going to happen. But the other part that we forget is that we're going to be judged beautifully too. We're also going to be judged for how amazing we are. And that when you do show up unapologetically, even for the haters, inside, they're going, man, I wish I could be that unapologetic, but I can't. So I'm going to tease you. Right. And it's again, their pain. And others you'll inspire like crazy. Oh my God, I don't know what it is about you, but I just want to be around you. You know what I mean? And we do it for them. We do it for them.
Yeah. Oh gosh, that is so fantastic. I love that. We're going to be judged anyway. So let's just live our lives unapologetically with who we are. And that, thank you for that reminder, though, that we're also going to be judged for how amazing we are, not just a silly thing we did or whatever somebody else
Right.
thinks of it. People are going to be going, that's tremendous. That's fantastic. You did such an amazing thing. And I'm inspired by you. Or I'm excited by this idea now of something that you're doing that you shared. And so thank you for that reminder. That's fantastic. Oh my goodness, Jessie, this has been such an amazing conversation. And I feel like there's about a dozen more questions I could ask you. But I do want to ask this. If there is anything else that you want to share with the person that's listening that you haven't said so far that you really think they should know, what would you share?
I would say you matter. You matter. You, wherever you are in your car, at home, wherever you are listening, you matter. You matter to the whole. I know sometimes we can feel isolated or we feel small or like our voice doesn't matter. It's not true. Every human being matters. And again, your one act of kindness can serve somebody. I have countless stories of people that were going to commit suicide and didn't because this one gentleman who he was in college and he had already planned it out, wrote his note, everything, went to his college thing to clean out his locker so his mom wouldn't have to. And this gentleman was walking and he's holding all his things. He's walking, he bumped into him and everything fell on the floor. And this guy was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And then this other person came in, they were helping him pick it up. And just that act of kindness shifted him from committing suicide that day. So don't believe that you are helpless and that you don't matter. You do, right? Every act, everything, complimenting the Starbucks lady, letting the guy go in front of you, just let them, right? We're always, hey, don't get in front of me. Hey, you took cuts. Just like let them. The more you live in that sense of peace, the more vibrationally you're spreading love in the world. And we need it. Light will always trump dark. So don't underestimate the power that you have right there in your heart to affect another human being because you never know who you will be loving on and waking up.
Mm. Yes. Thank you so much for that. That's fantastic. Oh, goodness. Again, just another beautiful thing that small acts of kindness, right? Just that reminder that each of us can do just one small thing to make somebody else feel good, light up their day, be helpful for somebody else. So that's a tremendous reminder that we need right now. So thank you for that. Okay, Jessie, because I always love to ask my guests if there's any books or podcasts that they think have been helpful or beneficial that they want to share with the listeners that might be worth checking out. Is there any you'd like to suggest?
Absolutely. You said books or podcasts, right?
Yes.
I think, oh, there's so many. I would say a great one is The Untethered Soul by Michael Singer. It's a great one that allows us to see from the lenses of the observer. As we start to witness ourselves in this life experience, we create this little bit of a separation so that I can be witness because we're souls and body in this human suit, right? So our spirit, our soul knows our magnificence. It knows that we are divine perfection. And the human is the one that has doubts and fears and, but don't you know this happened to me, blah, blah, blah. And it's okay. The spirit just hangs tight. That's what I call the superhero is the spirit hangs tight while you sort it. So untethered soul allows you to be witness to your human journey. So now when I'm triggered, I speak from the observer because that's the consciousness, right? Wow, Jesse's triggered right now. And when I do that, it takes away the edge or the pokiness of a trigger, right? Just like, oh, and that I have to hold on to. It's just like when I say, oh, Jesse's upset, I'm like, oh, okay, let me observe that and find out why. And then I choose to behave. So it brings it to consciousness. It's like Eckhart Tolle asks, are we our thoughts? And when I ask a room full of people, 90% will raise their hand. Yes, we are. Okay. You ever have a thought where you were like, think something weird and you're like, oh, that's weird. Why did I think of that? That's kind of stupid. I don't want to think about that. And then I ask, who's doing the talking? So it's not that we are our thoughts, right? We are the awareness beneath the thought, right? When I'm saying, why did I think that? It's just like I'm in consciousness now. It's just like that thought is not mine. I don't want it. Now I created that separation. And so what we are is the awareness or the consciousness beneath the thoughts. So Untethered Soul has a beautiful way of explaining it. He's got some others, the Surrender Experiment, and one that's most recent is Living Untethered. But I would definitely read the Untethered Soul first. There's also Letting Go by David Hawkins, which is another great one that talks about the omega levels of consciousness, which is also a great way for us to just regain our sovereignty. So those would be the two I'd highlight.
Yeah,
And
great
mine's
stuff.
coming up here soon.
Okay. Thank you so much for sharing those recommendations. I'll include the information in the show notes. I love Untethered Soul. It's a fantastic book. And you did mention Eckhart Tolle, even The Power of Now, great book as well. It's definitely one that you need to take time reading and rereading, I think. But it's another tremendous book. His work, I think, is great too. Do you have any podcasts that you enjoy listening to that you would like to share?
I don't, to be totally honest. I'm usually an audiobook. And so that's kind of what I do at the gym. And I have so many. So many. That's why when you ask, I'm like, oh, The Biology of Belief is another great one by Bruce Lipton. So I could go on and on and on. That's kind of what I put in my ears. So not at the moment, but I know there's a lot of great ones out there. And yours, of course.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Another great recommendation on books, so I'll include that for sure. Check that out as well. Jessie, thank you again so much for your time and all of this amazing knowledge that you've shared with us today. I think there's so many things in what you have told us today that we could immediately begin applying to our lives and changing the way that we're thinking about things, the questions that we're asking ourselves. So I think it's been just fantastic. So would you tell the listeners now, if they do have questions for you, want to follow along in the work that you're doing, how would they be able to do that?
They can go to iamfiercegrace.com. And there's all different kinds of way to work with me. Or if you just want to schedule a call, there's a button that says, let's chat. I'm happy to have a free consult with you and we can kind of bring you to clarity. I also have a little gift for your audience. It's a 10-step guide to freedom. And it is a resource, like you're saying, nuggets of wisdom, right? It's a way to be able to, no matter what your situation is right now, there's steps that you can take right away. It doesn't matter. I know sometimes it can look bleak or we think we don't have a way out. This is a guide that can help you take action right now to better your life or your situation or whatever. So that's my free offer to you guys. And just come to iamfiercegrace.com.
Perfect. I will detail that information in the show notes as well. And thank you again, Jessie. Truly, this has been a wonderful conversation. I appreciate you and your time. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. We'll talk more soon.
Thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in to another insightful episode of the Pockets of Knowledge podcast. We appreciate your time and curiosity as we explore fascinating topics together. If you enjoyed today's discussion, be sure to join us next week for another amazing episode. Remember, your journey of learning and growth is a continuous adventure, and we're thrilled to be part of it. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next week, stay curious and keep exploring those pockets of knowledge.